increasingly begun to take over in terms of expenditure state subjects. And I know that states have been pushing back and asking questions of the center. The move away from the Planning Commission to the Niti Aayog and the bringing in of the GST and setting up of the GST Council too have been very important innovations in strengthening the dynamic of center state. How do you see this evolve as federalism is going through an important transition in India today?
Well, we emerged as a federal sort of a country with federal states and a lot of powers to the states. And that gradually over a period of time has started diminishing. For instance, when I joined politics 50 years ago, it was a different scenario. There were a lot of powers with the states. Today we have none. You mentioned GST. We were told, now all our taxes, for instance, all the revenue that comes to us comes from GST, most of it. We have some from excise duty and some maybe from some mining operations or some very small amounts. Basically it's GST. And we were told that GST would be every month, it would be given to us. Then we were told it would be every quarter. And then it's now every 5 months. And we still haven't got it. And when we get it, and in the meantime, what do? To carry on our expenditure, we have to borrow money. Mm-hmm. So these are the sad things that are happening that I don't know how the world looks at our GST, but certainly I look at it from my Punjab's point of view. And in Punjab, we don't have the money which we should have been given. And I'm sure the other states are facing the same crisis. When we Congress chief ministers met the other day, everyone raised this issue of GST being delayed and affecting our overall functioning. So that is something that, one must look at. And the very concept of our constitution, which was federalism, doesn't seem to exist today.
In several conversations I've at any rate had on this issue, we find in fact increasingly a demand for more money to come back and for centrally sponsored schemes to be restored. Is there are states playing a little bit of a double-edged game over here? Mr. Singh, can I come back to you on this one? How does one balance this out? Why is it that despite greater devolution on paper, there remain the demand for more centrally sponsored schemes and more money from the center? And also, just as a aside, we have seen a marginal dip in expenditures in social sectors after the implementation of the 14th Finance Commission, which in some ways gives weight to the argument that you need strong central intervention to pursue national goals.
No, I think you should first remember, I think each of us has our own problems. Kamal's state is a different problem, mine is a different problem. And I'm sure like that also Meghalaya and others too. We must look at our history first before we can come down to these facts. It was Punjab that was at one time forced to go in to feed the country. We had the American PL 480. We were getting food all over, from all over the place, and rice and wheat and whatever else we required. And then Punjab took over this role. And we started producing at one time nearly 55% of the rice and about wheat and about 45% of rice to the National Food Pool, which we are still doing, not to that extent. But over the years, ever since independence, ever since the 60s when the Green Revolution came in, till now, it has been Punjab that has been required to do this job. So we didn't concentrate on other things, we concentrated on food. In the meantime, what happened? In the meantime, other states developed. You have the Kaveri belt, you have the Narmada belt, the Indo-Ganges, and the Jamuna-Ganga plain, all developed into paddy groves, and suddenly we find ourselves with surplus food. Do you know, we are going into the harvest has just started, and my godowns in Punjab are full. The government of India is not lifting. We've got all our godowns full of rice, all godowns full of wheat, and we don't know where we're going to put the next harvest in. So this is the way things are going. So over the last few years, we decided that we must go in for industrialization. And unless we have industrialization, unless we have revenue coming in, we can't tackle the basic problems which you're talking about. We need so much work to be done. Now, for instance, in Punjab, we are a very small Punjab comparatively, compared to Madhya Pradesh. We are 200 miles by 200 miles, that's Punjab. And of course, it's history that's brought us to this point. Otherwise, we were from Peshawar and from the Khyber Pass right down to Delhi at one time. And then situations have changed over the period of time. And now we are stuck with this. Now, what do we have here? We have a lot of our educational institutes. We have universities, we have ITIs, IITs, IIMs, you name it, and we've got it. And we are producing children, highly educated children, with no jobs. And therefore, and the shifting, which I saw in one of your notes, briefing notes, of rural to urban areas. It's about 1% a year, and I think by the year 2020, 30, we'll be about 50-50. That's the sort of scenario. Now, in that sort of scenario, we have to come in for a lot of industrialization. We need money. If we don't have money, how do we do this? So therefore, it is to bring as Kamal has also mentioned, we bring in policies, or what Mr. Rao has also said, policies that can draw capital into Punjab, and we have been successful. We have set up the Invest Punjab project, which is an organization which anyone goes there, and yes, it's been said before, single window clearance, but this time single window means single window, and things are happening, and it's happening on the ground, because 50,000 crores has come on the ground in the last 2 years, which never happened before in Punjab. So people are looking at it. I was just being asked a question as to what do we, how is this, what do we think is happening vis-a-vis the situation that's developing globally and also in our country, the financial situation. And I said, I know it is happening all over, but for us, it seems it's not happening, because Punjab is being looked as a destination and people are coming. I know Germans are coming. I know we've got people coming from Singapore. I know people who are coming from Japan, I hope. They want to put up their own city and develop industry around it. And we've got people coming from Taiwan is interested in us. So there are a lot of people coming, in addition to what we've already put on the ground. So things are working. But again, you need, when the cities, if you are to prevent them from becoming slums, then you need money. I mean, when I was the Member of Parliament, for instance, from Amritsar, I discovered that the northern part of Amritsar was highly contaminated for some reason, and we didn't know why this was happening. There was jaundice and there was all sorts of things in that area. So then we made a study of it, and we found out that, these old cities have never had sewage systems. They have been just gradually, haphazardly put in. And we found out that the pipes that were going underground, both the fresh water and the sewage water were going parallel. So they had corroded and water was getting mixed up, and people were drinking that stuff. So this was the sort of things, how do you tackle it? You need money. Where does that money come from? We don't have it. We are an agriculture economy. We've done our bit for the country. But when we need the country, and that means when we need Delhi, we don't get Delhi. And how do we find that money to do what we are doing? I can't run on what I've got. I've got excise taxation, excise money which is coming in at 6,000 crores. I get mining. I don't have any mining source other than river sand. And that's 300 crores, and that's the sum total of the revenue that I'm generating. Therefore, if the government of India doesn't live up to its promises, and whether, as you're saying, that 200 or 300, my finance minister comes here. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. He's involved in another seminar. But if it's going to be 300 amendments in a few months, then there's something basically wrong. And how do we live? In the meantime, the states have handed over all their fiscal powers to the center. And you better come up with some answers to give us the money on time so that we can bring. Why should I have to borrow money to pay my salaries? That I don't think is something that any state can, no modern state can function in this manner. We should have the resources of our own. And I think if the government of India now puts they've borrowing from national reserves, they can borrow from wherever it's necessary. I can't do that. The support which we are getting from Delhi is gradually dwindling. 90-10 at one time, 70-30, 60-40, in some cases wiped out altogether. So you find your own money from wherever you want to do it. And that is, I'll tell you in which case, one of the cases which I am finding for the very the poorer sections. The government of India is to give us a certain amount of money for their post-metric scholarships for colleges and all. They've stopped that. You do your own. Now, for so many thousands of crores, where do I get it from? So then what do? I drop. We will have to stop doing it, and people will drop out of colleges. So these are the sad parts that are happening. And I think, therefore, it is something that the country, the current government, I don't put the blame on them. After all, GST was conceived a long time ago. But we have to resolve it. Sure. And we've got to resolve it, and we've got to get our states moving, because if we don't have the resources, we can't move forward.
I think we've had a very, very important and robust discussion on the dynamics of center-state relations, on the transition to urbanization, on the need for perhaps new institutional platforms for center-state discussions, and the big conundrum of the decentralization and the importance of concurrent decentralization and not a staged one. I think we are all out of time. I don't know, the organizers will have to tell me we don't have any time for any questions. We started a wee bit late, which sort of ate up into the time for the discussion. But thank you very, very much. I think this was very important for many of us to understand what happens in states and how states can be better drivers of growth in India. Mr. Singh, can I start with you? Much as I have said, states are becoming more and more relevant as state expenditure is increasing. We've also in this period saw an increase of centralization as Government of India through centrally sponsored schemes, through planned funds in the days of the Planning Commission and now centrally sponsored schemes and central schemes have increasingly begun to take over in terms of expenditure state subjects. And I know that states have been pushing back and asking questions of the center. The move away from the Planning Commission to the Niti Aayog and the bringing in of the GST and setting up of the GST Council too have been very important innovations in strengthening the dynamic of center state. How do you see this evolve as federalism is going through an important transition in India today?
Well, we emerged as a federal sort of a country with federal states and a lot of powers to the states. And that gradually over a period of time has started diminishing. For instance, when I joined politics 50 years ago, it was a different scenario. There were a lot of powers with states. Today we have none. You mentioned GST. We were told, now all our taxes, for instance, all the revenue that comes to us comes from GST, most of it. We have some from excise duty and some maybe from some mining operations or some very small amounts. Basically it's GST. And we were told that GST would be every month, it would be given to us. Then we were told it would be due every quarter. And then it's now every 5 months. And we still haven't got it. And when we get it, and in the meantime, what do we do to